Today, we're jumping right into a fascinating medical puzzle. We're going to unravel the complex clues behind a condition known as Cushing syndrome, which, believe me, can show up in some really surprising ways. So let's kick things off with that puzzle. I'm about to show you a few signs that, on the surface, seem to have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But as you're about to see, they are all critical pieces of the exact same diagnostic picture. First up, you've got this really specific kind of weight gain. It's not all over, it really concentrates right around the middle or on the abdomen, while the arms and legs can stay pretty thin. And with it, you often see this distinctively round, full face, which doctors sometimes call a moon face. Next, there are some pretty dramatic changes to the skin. It can get really fragile, which means it bruises super easily. And patients often get these very wide, prominent purplish-looking stretch marks, what doctors call striae, usually on their belly and thighs. And finally, the puzzle isn't just about what you can see on the outside. There are internal changes too. Things like a noticeable weakening of the muscles, especially around the hips and shoulders, and on top of that, developing high blood pressure and even diabetes. So what in the world ties all of these things together? A round face, weak muscles, purple stretch marks. It seems random, right? Well, it all points back to a single culprit: having way too much of the hormone cortisol day in and day out. And that's what this condition is, officially. It's called Cushing's syndrome, and the definition is pretty simple. It's a state of having a chronic excess of cortisol in your body. It tends to show up more in women, typically in their 40s and 50s. Okay, so if a doctor suspects Cushing's, how do they actually prove it? This is where it gets really interesting. It's like genuine detective work following a very specific step-by-step process to crack the case. The best way to think about the whole diagnostic journey is to picture a funnel. You start really broad, just trying to see if there's a problem at all. And then, with each step, you get more and more specific, narrowing it down until you zeroed in on the exact source. And this is that funnel in action. 4 key steps. Step 1, just confirm that cortisol levels are actually high. Step 2, check another hormone, ACTH, to figure out why. Is the brain sending the wrong signals, or is it something else? Step 3, time for imaging, like an MRI, to actually find the tumor. And step 4, if you still can't see it on a scan, there's a final super specialized test called an IPSS that gives you the definitive answer. Now, in one of those first screening tests, this number is basically magic. After the test, if your cortisol level is below 50, you almost certainly do not have Cushing syndrome. It's an incredibly powerful and clear way to rule it out right at the start. This brings us to the next phase of the investigation. Once you've confirmed that cortisol is high, the whole game changes. The question isn't if there's a problem anymore. Now it's all about finding out where that problem is coming from. So the investigation splits right down 2 main paths. In about 85% of cases, the problem is what we call ACTH dependent. Basically, another hormone, ACTH, is acting like a boss, telling the adrenal glands to work overtime and pump out way too much cortisol. The other 15% are ACTH independent, where the adrenal glands themselves have just gone rogue. And that leads us to our 3 main suspects. In that ACTH-dependent group, the cause is usually a tiny tumor in the pituitary gland in the brain. Or, less commonly, it could be a tumor somewhere else entirely, like the lungs. And in that ACTH-independent group, the culprit is almost always a tumor right on the adrenal gland itself. So once the culprit has been identified, we move into the final phase, creating a targeted plan of attack. And this is key. The treatment has to be tailored precisely to whatever cause you just uncovered. The first move in almost every case is surgery. If it's a pituitary tumor, surgeons can actually go through the nose to get it out. If it's an adrenal tumor, they remove the whole gland. The goal is simple and direct. Take out the source of the problem. But surgery isn't always an option, or sometimes it might not be 100% successful. When that happens, doctors turn to a pretty powerful arsenal of medications to get those cortisol levels back under control. And here are the 2 main players on that team. In the UK, metronidazole is usually the first choice. It works really fast by blocking the very last step of cortisol production. Its main rival is ketoconazole. It's a bit slower to act, but it blocks multiple steps in the process. Each one has its own set of pros and cons that doctors have to manage really carefully. All right, let's wrap this all up.
Let's quickly go over the most critical, must-know takeaways from our investigation into this really complex and honestly often tricky condition.
Okay, these are the absolute essentials. 1. Never, ever proceed with just one abnormal screening test. You always need at least 2 to be sure. 2. That ACTH level is the master key. It tells you which path to go down. 3. Don't let a normal brain MRI fool you. The tumor can be too small to see, which is why that IPSS test is so incredibly important. And finally, 4. When you have to use medication, Metaripone is the go-to in the UK because it's fast and safe. And that leaves us with one final thought. This whole process of diagnosing Cushing's, of connecting a simple thing like a moon face to a tiny tumor deep in the brain, it isn't just about this one disease. It's a perfect example of how medicine itself learns to see the pattern in the noise, how it distinguishes a single symptom from a complex syndrome, which is really the heart of all medical discovery.